Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of the imperfections or opuculases called thambha. Thambha means not being able to open up for guidance or advice from a right person. Uh, it is not just uh, being able to uh, you know open up for the guidance or advice, but also it talks about and any type of like unwillingness to receive guidance or uh, advice from a right person, a good person for for one's well-being. Now, this is actually one of the upakilas, as I just told you, and it actually makes us really, really incapacitated in pursuing our spiritual path. So, basically, thambha, uh, which is also, um, you know, uh, which is also obstinacy or stubbornness, as we understand in our normal, regular lives of sometimes of us, sometimes of other people, is a big problem because when it comes to Buddhist spiritual activities, Buddha always actually talks to us about, you know, the significance or importance of being able to open up for the good people, right? Now, if you can remember the Metta Sutta, in the Metta Sutta, Buddha talks about skillful habits in addition to executing the 10 kusala or wholesome activities, right? Wholesome activities which has three for body, four for speech, while another three for the mind, right? So in addition to pursuing or executing these skillful activities, one needs to develop skillful habits. Otherwise, I don't think that practice of the 10 skillful activities makes sense. In the list of the skillful habits, what we see in the first few skillful habits, uh, is very important. Like, let's take a look at how it starts. Karaniya matta kusalena atta kusala. So, I mean, yantang santang padang abhisamicca, the person who wants to attain the nibbana, to end the suffering, needs to cultivate these skillful habits, starting from sakku, ujucha, sujucha, suachu, anatimani, mudu anatimani, right? So sakku means like one has to be skilled, not even in spirituality, but also in other all, you know, able areas of one's life. Uju means moral uprightness. As you may know that sometimes we may be biased to things when we understand our morality. For example, like I might say someone is jealous, but when my people, my friends, my relatives, are to be jealous, I may not see it's a problem because I'm biased to them, right? It's a problem. So then that means I have no moral uprightness if I'm doing like that. So we should be able to see, akusala to be akusala, kusala to be kusala, no matter who executes those actions, those speeches, those, thoughts, right? So moral uprightness, that means, uju. Suju means honesty, right? So we need honesty at all times, right? So if we don't have honesty, that means we might actually go even worse with our moral, without that, being corrupted from this not having moral uprightness, right? So we need that sincerity or honesty of all our action in all our actions, right? Or words and thoughts. So the most important thing comes after. Sakko, ujucha, sujucha, suacho. Suacha means that we should be able to open up for guidance or advices from right people or person, right? One of the things that we know in the Chulakamma Vibhanga Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, as we discussed some times ago, why some as to why some people are actually, some individuals are unwise, could be a reason from their past lives, in which way they did not approach uh, you know monastics or people, good individuals who had a direct experience about the truth, and who knows how to separate out good and bad, or kusala and akusala. So when people don't approach such good individuals, great individuals, to separate out kusala and akusala, that will give them a very hard time in their that life, or in the next lives that they're going to experience, because they did not understand how to separate out kusala and akusala, wholesome and unwholesome stuff, and that will make them unwise actually in the next lives. So that means actually suvacha, that means being able to open up, is one of the skillful habits in the Metta Sutta. I want to actually make it relevant for this talk, because we actually talking about thambha. One of the upakilas is called obstinacy or stubbornness about spirituality, right? Okay, so now we need to take a look at why this happens in individuals, people. As we know that this could be kind of a imperfection, a bad thing that come from actually being ignorant about self, conventional self, and the not self, ultimate not self, atta and anatta thing. As we know in Buddhism, especially when you take a look at of Dhammapada, even that handbook, you can kind of like see how Buddha talks about atta. Like Buddha, while Buddha talks about atta from the conventional context, he also talks about not self, which you call anatta. I think a lot of people, they confuse these two, because Buddha teaches us to understand the conventional self first, before trying to understand the not self, even though that's the main goal of Buddhism, right? Because a lot of people think that they want to actually do a kind of a big crossover from conventional self to ultimate not self, without understanding what is conventional self. So I think one of the main reasons of why people are obstinate or stubborn about spirituality, or in terms of well-being, in terms of good things in their lives, could be kind of a kind of an effect from misunderstanding this conventional self. They could be either having some underestimations, or kind of like overconfident about their self. So this is something that we need to understand, right? Because we are not making good things, or we are not good all the time, because we are normal people, right? So we should be able to open up for the good people without defending us actually all the time. So I understand that this misunderstanding of the context of the conventional self could be the reason of this obstinacy, or stubbornness, or whatever we call in Pali thambha. Actually, thambha in Pali means a pillar, right? So pillars are not actually shakable, they are not movable, right? So some people are like that. Sometimes there are fanatics, like religious fanatics. There are different type of fanatics. They think that whatever they hold as a view, as a perspective, is the most authentic, truthful thing, at a time that there are a lot of flaws and mistakes, faults surrounded with that. So anyway, why did Buddha teach us that being able to open up, or you know or willing to understand, willing to open up oneself for good guidance or advices from right. For example, you know uh, now what is the immediate mentality that happens to us when someone actually points out kind of a fault or flaw in our character, in our behaviors or activities? We tend to defend ourselves. Hey, you can't do that because I know what to do, right? So that's our normal nature. But sometimes if you step back and if you take a deep breath, I understand that, I assume that those people actually pointing out or showing your faults or mistakes or whatever flows at the right time in a better way, privately, not in public, right? By protecting your whatever the ethics and the dignity. Then if you can actually give some time to understand, actually give few minutes to think about what that person actually pointed out about you, what that person actually told about you, whatever the things, you kind of like understand there is something that I'm lacking, that I'm actually missing out on. So that is something that you can actually focus on, or maybe you can learn, maybe you can unlearn, maybe you can relearn or revisit about that particular thing, right? So one of the main things that we need to do in terms of obstinacy or stubbornness, in terms of good things, including the Buddhist path or spirituality, is that you and I and everybody in this world should be able to, have some space for learning good things from other people, no matter, no matter what, or regardless of the person, regardless of the, whatever XYZ. If you are really able to, leave some space to this thing, and then you can actually learn new things, actually. And also, if you can unlearn some of the unnecessary stuff that you've been actually having so far. I think in our lives there are a lot of things that we've been actually bringing forward, actually, at a time we could have actually dropped that unnecessary knowledge or stuff in our life. Because if you simply understand this thing with an example, like if you take a gadget, like an electronic gadget, there's a memory, right? If you if you actually keep browsing, keep having those information or applications for some time, but you don't need those applications, but over time what will happen to your computer or whatever the gadget is, that gadget becomes slow, or whatever the computer becomes slow, and then you can actually have a smooth running of your applications or computer, right? So you will need to delete the browsing history or whatever. You need to kind of like how do you call that, undo or unsubscribe or whatever. So then you may feel that now my computer looks faster or my applications work faster because I have actually kind of like deleted unnecessary applications in my gadgets, right? So it is the same thing that happens to unnecessary stuff that we've been carrying so far, right? So sometimes we've been actually storing unnecessary stuff in our memories, in our experiences. We need to actually unlearn those things in order to learn new things, also to relearn or revisit what we already know, right? So this is the main type of benefits of not being stubborn, not being obstinate about the good things in our life, right? And self, I actually talked about one of the causes is self, and if we deeply look at the primary cause of stubbornness or obstinacy about good things, is the ignorance, right? So this is what we know in Buddhism, we see ignorance is the root cause of all the problems. Anyway, but the immediate thing we can see about being obstinate or stubborn about good things, or learning, good things from a good person, could be a wrong understanding about the self, because we tend to defend ourselves, convention ourselves. At the same time, the primary cause is ignorance. And what we can do actually to keep us actually away from being obstinate or being stubborn is to keep a mentality, to be able to, have some space for learning new things. I mean, not even just new knowledge, but also good things from anybody. You could be a Buddhist, you could be somebody else, but there could be new things that you don't know, right? And at the same time, to have some space, to have some courage, to have some boldness to to unlearn unnecessary stuff. That's a good thing too, right? So then you actually make more space, plenty of space for new things to come in. And the third thing is to revisit whatever you already know, or to maybe to develop what you already know from the sources or from the people or places. So as I mentioned to you at the beginning, thambha, or being obstinate or being stubborn about for learning new things for learning good things, for good advices or guidance, is a one of the upakilesas, imperfections to the Buddha. So we need to get away from being obstinate or being stubborn. Otherwise, we won't be able to touch base with the spiritual path, starting from the Saddhanusari, Dhammanusari, or Sotapanna. And if we can also take a look at some of the stories in the Buddhist history. As you may know, Venerable Rahula, he actually was 7 years old at that time, and he was actually early in the morning. He was actually wishing, I wish I would get a bunch of advices from the senior monks or other peers. See how open was he actually, being an arahant, small arahant, right? And what about Angulimala's story? Angulimala was actually a serial killer, but when Buddha said, when he said to the Buddha, hey, stop, monk, and he said, the Buddha said to him, yeah, I already stopped, but you are the person who's still running, right? So he was actually able to understand this small, intricate, tricky point which Buddha told him, and then even he was a serial killer, he was able to open up for the advice. That means, like, in this society, if we are really conscious about what we can do to other people, I mean, in a good way, we can really impact any bad person in a positive way. What about the good people? We can do that, definitely. So there are a bunch of stories that we can actually find, to validate the significance or the well-being of being not obstinate or not stubborn. I hope that you learned something today about this upakilesa, and I hope this will help you to overcome this issue. Thank you so much. Have a good night.